This video will show you how to remove and replace the door lock mechanism on front load washing machines. Safety first, so always disconnect power before servicing any electrical appliance. And remember that the exposed edges and the internal edges on these machines are very sharp and they will cut you, so be careful not to get cut. This is a GE washing machine, but the same procedures apply to most brands. They all pretty much have the same setup for doing the door lock switch. And the first thing I'm going to do is open the door to where I can get to the door lock mechanism. There's the screws on there that I'm going to have to remove. Before I remove anything there though, I'm going to go ahead and take the spring clamp off of the boot, the bellows boot that connects to the door, and I'm using a flat blade screwdriver. Get in between the edge there to where that spring clamp is and catch it underneath the spring and then flip it up and over the edge. And it's a little bit harder to do than what it sounds. As you can see, I'm struggling a little bit to get a hold of it. And the reason I'm taking as long as it does there, I'm being careful not to gouge or damage the boot, because you certainly don't want to do that and then have a leak. Once you get the screwdriver in place though, where you can flip it over and have the spring on it, slide the screwdriver underneath the spring a little bit further, and then you're going to very carefully begin to lift up and then around the edge, and that will remove the spring clamp out of the channel that holds that boot in place. Okay, and you want to do it very carefully so you're not ripping or tearing or damaging the boot in any way. Just take your time doing it and you won't have any problems getting it done. The spring part of it is usually at the very bottom at the 6 o'clock position, and there shows the boot being pulled away a little bit to where I can have access to where the door locks mechanism is. So set the spring aside, and then you're going to very carefully remove the boot from the lip that it was attached to, but just enough of it to get to the work area where we're going to work on this door lock at. You don't need to remove the whole boot, because then you have to obviously put it all back in place, and it's not that easy to do, so you want to have as little of it to do as possible when it comes time to put it back together. Once you've got it folded out of the way enough there to get to where you're going to work, use a Phillips head screwdriver and remove the mounting screws that hold the switch mechanism to the door panel. There's 3 on this particular one. Some will just have 2, but most of them have 3. The third one up there is by the little door switch, that little push button switch. So make sure you get it too, because otherwise it's not going to move. Once those are removed, fold that boot back out of the way a little bit. Push the lock mechanism out of the door panel, and then you'll have it hanging on the wires there, and sometimes they have a bracket hanging on there as well, so take the bracket off next before you try to remove the wires. Once the bracket's removed and you have just the wire harnesses attached, then you can just unclip them and remove them. Now what I'm showing you there is that bottom lollipop looking thing. That's the manual door lock release, and if your door will not unlock because it's broke, you can pull that straight down to unlock the door, and to get to it you have to take that bottom panel off and then reach in underneath there to get to it, and then pull it straight down, and that'll unlock the door where you can get it open and get the switch removed and replaced. Once you've removed all the wire harnesses from your door lock mechanism, of course go ahead and get the new one and then just plug them back in the same way they came off of the other one. They're all keyed, you can't get them mixed up, so just reattach them where they belong. Once the wire harnesses are attached, if there was a bracket, go ahead and reattach it. And then once you have everything reassembled, put it back in place so that everything aligns. You want to make sure, of course, that the little door latch is going to go in the square hole, and make sure that small door switch at the top goes through its hole where it belongs so everything aligns. Hold it in place with your left hand, and then begin installing the screws that mount it to the door panel. And these are Phillips head screws, so we'll use a Phillips head screwdriver to tighten them up, and just tighten them up snug. They don't need to be over tightened. You don't want to crack or break the plastic part of the door switch or door lock mechanism. So just get those snug. There you have it. Now we need to reinstall this boot. So start at the edge there where it was, of course, where you had removed it from, and you pull the back part away from the center all the way around until you get the boot completely mounted on the lip that it mounts to. Just take your time doing it. It's not real hard to do. It's just a little time consuming. Just go all the way around, just a little bit at a time until it's all in place. Once the boot is completely in place, then it's time to reinstall the spring clamp. The spring on this thing is pretty tight, so set the clamp in the channel that it goes in at the top with the spring down at the 6 o'clock position. And you're probably not going to be strong enough to pull that spring apart and just snap it in place. You're probably going to need to use screwdrivers. I always do. It makes it a lot easier. So put it as far as you can until it gets tight. Then slot in a screwdriver there to kind of hold it in place. And then we'll do the same on the other side. Of course that fell out, but just keep working back and forth. Put one end up here. Again, I'm being careful, of course, to make sure I don't rip or tear the boot. And you have to be careful not to fold that top part of the boot down underneath the spring. It's got to stay above it. Using 2 screwdrivers at one time will usually get you pretty close there when you get to the end to where you can just snap it over. Okay. And then if there's any spots that are on top of it a little bit, roll them over down into the channel. And then just check it all the way around and make sure that the spring clamp is in the channel and that the boot top lip is not caught underneath it or kinked in any way. Otherwise it might leak from there when it's being ran. Now that that's done, close it up and you're ready to go test it.